Welcome back to Georgian Bay Life. We've got an interesting event coming up in our area. The Everett Legion is going to host a psychic expo very shortly, and the noted speaker and special guest will be Christopher Stillar, who's a medium, and he'll be doing a special event there, a special seminar, and I'm pleased to meet you here. We want to talk a little bit about, well, a number of different things. Fascinating story you've got, but first we've got to clarify exactly what a medium is.
A medium is a person that can interpret thoughts, images, hear words, and receive messages from the other side. People that have passed over. So
people who have passed can contact you in, you just hear them, you can see them, or they can do whatever they choose?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. I can see, I can hear, and feel. When I say I see, it isn't that I'm seeing with my eyes either. A lot of people think because of the Hollywood version of the TV shows, that's how mediums see them, but it's not like that. It's
kind of just more of an image that appears
in my head, or a visual, or if I asked you to daydream, Jeremy, you could pull up a favorite summer vacation.
Sure.
See it in color, that's what I would be seeing.
Okay, I think I get you. I want to talk a little bit about, as far as the Psychic Expo goes, what actually will you be doing at the Everett Legion?
My part of it is a 2.5-hour seminar that evening that I will be talking, educating, hopefully laughing and joking around with people, and then providing messages randomly to those in the audience.
So not only educating people about what it is and what you do and what how you can help people, but actually taking questions from the audience about who has come through. Am I using that term right?
Yeah, well, I can't control who comes through, so the audience doesn't ask, who's around me. If they have a question they want to know about life after death or grieving or anything like that that I could maybe help them with, they can ask. I'll talk about my personal experiences and past readings, and then randomly I get pulled to certain areas where people coming through from the other side with messages. Okay,
but if I go to Everett and I want to talk to Grandpa, find that brother, is there anything I can do to help you?
No, just be open. But that day, there's 12 different psychics, mediums, healers that will be there participating during the day that people can book their individual readings with if they would like.
Okay, so I can come and sit down and focus one-on-one with someone, but when it comes to the group, you'll be helping everyone out.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about your story. You first found out that you had this ability when your grandfather passed away, correct?
No, actually my grandmother.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Back in 1996, when my grandmother died, within 2 weeks of her death, I started to see, hear, and feel things that I hadn't before. But 2 years prior to that, I had a brain issue that I was hospitalized for that they thought was either stroke or tumor related, which it turned out to be nothing of that. Severe headaches that came as a result of that, and then it passed, and I think that unlocked something with the brain back in '94.
So you think that wasn't a medical issue, but I don't want to say it in term incorrectly, but you getting switched on, your
I think physically something happened in the brain that enabled me to access or be accessed by the other side. So.
Fascinating stuff. So I want to talk a little bit about how things would go when you sit down one-on-one, because you do through your website offer private seminars.
Yes, sessions.
Yes. Yeah, sessions, sorry. So if I sat down for a session, how does it work? Do I lie down on the couch like my shrink? Or?
No, God, no. The client just will simply come into my office, we greet, I'll run through some explanations of what they might expect and how to pay attention to the details after the reading, because many of the details will come to light afterwards, because the person often comes with 1 or 2 people solely in mind, and then they end up getting somebody they never expected.
So if I think I'm getting grandma and I get a long lost aunt.
Yes, definitely that happens.
I can get lost. Okay. Am I allowed to take notes as I go, so I can go back and say, wow, it really was 63?
Well, you can take the notes, but the whole session is recorded, and the client gets to take a CD with them when they leave the office. So
I can listen back and
everything is
that's
recorded.
What he was trying to say. Is there an opportunity, if the person I want comes through, can I ask questions? Does it work 2 ways? Can I?
Well, it can, but there's no guarantees what they'll answer or how they'll respond, and I always caution people, be careful what you ask, because you just don't know what the answer will be, and if I hear it, see it, or feel it, I'm passing it on. It's not for me to keep. So
fair enough. What do people usually want to find out?
I think it varies. What I find the typical case of a reading when it works best is when there's genuine need, whether it's grief, whether it's guilt, whether it's the need of the spirit coming through. Often they need to clean the palate, per se.
So there's something left unresolved.
Sure.
Can it be, I don't want to say a practical thing, but can it be something tangible, like where's the will? Can it be what would you like done with your war medals? Can it be something concrete?
Yeah, they often will come up and talk about that stuff, but I often say they don't really care about the physical items. But then every once in a while there will be one that'll come through and dispel that.
And say,
I wasn't happy with who ended up with the house, or the fighting of the house, or
the watch should have gone to Jeremy.
Yeah, you didn't get your grandfather's watch. That's right.
My older brother got the watch. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about what may be here with us as well. We're going to give you some time to concentrate on that. We'll talk more with Christopher Stillar. But in the meantime, Jen's learning more about issues you can resolve when it comes to your pet. Jen? Yes, thank you very much, Jen. Continuing our conversation with Christopher Stillar, is a medium who's going to be doing a special presentation at the Everett Legion at the Psychic Expo on November the 13th. As far as that goes, you'll actually be taking an entire group of people and seeing who comes through and communicating with the afterlife. In a group session like that, is it difficult to figure out who gets through, or is it? This sounds so weird, but are the people who've passed on fighting to see who's loudest in the room? Are they trying to get their message across at once?
It really can vary. I believe that the other side's kind of aligned who would come through and when, so they know. But pecking order, kind of.
So they're lined up
based on need. Well, I don't know if they're lined up, but I also will say they're opportunists, because there are times that they will come through when you least expect it, or a person you least expect, but they're going to take their shot. So somebody could come through for you, Jeremy, but it's not your family, but it's a friend of your family. Or
I was going to ask, do I have to have a connection to that someone?
There has to be a connection, but it may not be a personal connection. I've had a lot of, I did a reading for a man earlier this year. He was about 60, and he came for a reading, and his father came through and dominated the whole session, talked about his life, talked about him being a divorced father of 3 girls.
He was talking, the father who had passed on was talking about his son's life.
The client, yep.
Wow.
And what I found out after the reading, which I didn't know, was that his father had died 3 months before he was born. So he never knew his dad, didn't have that physical connection, but the bonds were still there.
Amazing, amazing. Can you turn that off? Can you flip a switch and go, right, I'm going to bed now?
I'm fortunate. They don't. I don't seem to need to throw a switch. I'll open up, I'll prepare before readings, but I never seem to have to turn it off, and they're not too intrusive.
Can I ask what preparing means?
To me, I meditate, or I give thanks and prayer. Open up my chakras, and I just get ready to receive. And it isn't that I need to do it to receive the messages, but to me it's a respect issue, and I figure I'm going to meet them halfway instead of making them work the whole thing.
They've done a whole lot more.
They've doing a whole lot more than I ever do.
Because you mentioned the spiritual aspects of this. Do I need to believe? Do I need to have faith in order for them to come through?
No, they'll come through for skeptics or believers.
Do people who have passed over who had faith come across more often?
It's mixed. A lot of times people that didn't believe in it will come through, and they can be the loudest because they have something to prove to the family member.
Very interesting. I feel a bit of trepidation to ask this, but has anyone come through for anyone here? Well, we're all a little bit nervous about this.
Don't be nervous. I should be nervous.
But for a lot of people, it can be a stressful situation.
I guess, but it can be a healing one as well.
Right.
And that usually comes after the fact. But to answer your question, I've had 3 different people coming through, but not super strong or anything.
Okay.
And not since the lights have been on and we're on live am I feeling them. But I had an older male coming through. I had 3 people. An older male coming through, talked about like a lung cancer, emphysema, fluid in the lung issue that I feel was primary cause of death.
Okay.
I've had an older female that I think is a grandmother connection that would be aneurysm or stroke related in nature by the way that she was coming through.
Okay.
And on my ride up here, I had a male coming through that was killed in an impact that would be a contemporary to the side. And it wasn't a family member. It belongs apparently to a neighbor, and it was their child that was killed. So somebody here in the studio would have the neighbor, and their son was killed in an impact trauma car accident.
So that's on your trip here. So before you've met any of us, before you've seen any of this, that person comes through and communicates you. How do they communicate the relationship and the death? Do you see that? Do you feel that? Do you?
Sometimes I feel it. Sometimes I see it. It's sympathetic pain if you feel it. You know, it can be a little unnerving if somebody committed suicide and hung themselves and your throat starts to close off. But it's nothing to panic over. It'll pass very quickly, and it's just an indicator of a person decided to asphyxiate or hang themselves.
As far as the impact, did you see that, feel that?
Feel it, and it's after 15 years of doing it, there's shortcuts they can do to let me know. Generalizing, you know, I used to get very specific things that I would see, and now they don't have to do it because I've done it for so long that I know where they're going with it.
Fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff. Thankfully, you're going to stay with us a little bit longer. We'll talk a little bit more about the afterlife and what's over there. It may not be a fair question, but I'm going to ask that later on. We'll also talk about his connection with Mothers Against Drunk Driving. That and more. Welcome back to Georgian Bay Life, continuing a fascinating discussion with a fascinating guy. Christopher Stillar is a noted medium who will be appearing at the Everett Legion on November 13th at their Psychic Expo. We were talking about your ability to communicate with people who've passed on and who has come through for us here. So you got some time to hang out and meet the staff, and 3 distinct people came through. And you got a little bit of information about one of the older males who came across, right?
Yeah, I felt the older male that had the lung congestion. I felt like a father figure, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And I felt he had passed before the birth of a child, and he wanted whoever it was for here to know that he's fully aware of the children, the boy, the son, grandson. So that was the
message you got across?
Yeah, that's all I got.
Is that usually what they want us to know is, and I'll say it, the important things in life, kids, family, love, marriage, is that...
Forgiveness.
Is that why they're coming across?
Yeah, and I think the bigger picture gets missed because it's about life is continuing on. They're aware, they see, they hear, they get our thoughts, they know how we feel, and they interact in our day-to-day lives, and for many of us we're just oblivious to it.
Now, all the stories that we've told and that we talked and that I came across on your website seem to be all positive things. Hey, somebody I wanted to hear from came across with the do we get negative messages? Do bad people get to cross over and come back?
Well, bad people get to cross, but I don't think they stay bad. And bad is, you know, very judgmental and,
right.
And you know, on our part, but I think everybody transforms on the other side, because when you, for the lack of a better word, surrounded in pure love, it's hard to stay negative. It's hard to stay.
Do old fights continue though?
Well, they can. You know, people can carry, that's what the soul is personality. So you take it over, but what tends to happen is people will see a broader perspective of what the issue was, and it's easier for them to maybe own their shortcomings on the other side. I guess
the idea, when you attend someone's funeral, you tend to forget about all the little issues and you just remember the good times. I guess when it's your funeral, you tend to forget even more of the little things that build up.
They just don't matter.
Fascinating stuff. You also did some work recently with Mothers Against Drunk Driving. How did that relationship start, and what did you do with them?
Well, it started based on a one-on-one client reading I did for a lady. Her son had died several years before, and she, unbeknownst to me, was a part of MAD, of the Dufferin chapter, and she got a hold of the head office in Toronto and said, you got to see this guy and get him involved. And since 2003, I've been a fixture at their vigil weekends where they fly the families in from all across Canada, and I do seminars for them and give messages and help with the bereavement.
And that's the idea, is that you're not only the conduit and the ability, the opportunity to communicate, but because you've dealt with grief so much, you try to help your audiences along as they go.
Yeah, because what I do is a short fix. You know, you feel good for the moment, it's like a Band-Aid, but when they go home from my office, they often can have that pitfall where they like, oh, was that real or wasn't it? So that's where the CD and that comes in handy, because they can listen to it verbatim and see, yeah, my son was there. And
I think that we talked about the trepidation a lot of us feel when you came in to sat down. Is I don't think a lot of us want to bring back the sad memories.
Sure.
You don't want to bring the memory of the fact that Grandpa passed or that Grandma passed.
I think it's huge that people don't focus on that 1 minute in time that is their death, and you look at the years you had with them, because that's what their life is. It's not the last moments they took their last breath or were in the car accident or whatever.
Thanks to everyone who joined us for another fascinating edition of Georgian Bay Life. Christopher Stillar, medium, who'll be at the Everett Legion fundraiser, their Psychic Expo coming up on November 13th. Fascinating guy. No question about it, that guy is, wow, interesting to talk to, and you think you've put together the connection that he had as far as who was coming across?
I do, yes. A friend of mine that I work with lost her son 2 years ago in a car accident. So I feel like, and he said neighbor, we live around the corner from each other, and when he said not related, you know? And we were just talking about, Catherine and I were just talking about her losing her son on Monday.
Fascinating stuff. Really interesting stuff. We'll talk more and more about that because he's got to come back. He's got to come back, and we've got to continue to talk about. There's so many questions.
No, and I feel like we all have one of those stories where like we've been touched by someone or had a feeling.